Hello, everybody. It's Marcy from wavesofcommunication.com. Welcome to my first ever episode of my Language Facilitation Helpline podcast. The information I provide in this show is designed to equip and empower parents to take at least one specific action today toward helping your child shift from nonverbal communication into unprompted spoken language. The strategies and advice provided here are general and not intended to replace personalized consultation. Parents will need to adapt strategies to fit into your unique household and match your child's superpowers. Most importantly, never give away your power or responsibility as your child's language facilitator to any therapist, teacher, consultant, or even to a specific method or strategy. This first episode is an interview and language facilitation strategy session with a mom of a nonverbal 10-year-old boy who has a diagnosis of mild autism and global apraxia. You will be able to listen in as we discuss her plan to find her son's spoken language. Deepti is a pediatrician who also has a late talking child who is 10 years old with a diagnosis of mild autism and global apraxia, which means that he's having motor challenges, not just in his talking, but in his whole body. So welcome, Deepti. And thank you for joining us today, and thank you for sharing your personal story. So the first question I'd like to ask you today is how you determined what was going on with your son and, what you've been doing so far. Why don't you share that with us?
Yeah, hi. So, I being a pediatrician, this is my first child. He was a fairly good, healthy child with no problems till about 1 year of life. But he never talked. But because he was very happy child playing, smiling at us, we never realized till about 1 year that anything could be wrong with him. Only between 1 to 1.5 years of age, I could make out that there was certain deviation in his behavior from what I see in the normal kids as a mother and as a pediatrician mainly. So by 1.5 years, because he was never saying bye to me or coming to me to show something of his interest, although he was just communicating his needs by taking me to whatever he want or gesturing. Then by around 2 years, I think when he was about 2 years, I was almost certain that he would be classified as probably one on ASD spectrum. I was trying at home with whatever strategies I could to gain his attention and play with him, with trying to devote whatever time I have towards him. But not much of difference I could see. By 3 years of age, he was given a diagnosis of mild autism and also rated on the CARS scoring sheet, and it was like mild autism, but completely non-verbal child. By a child psychiatrist also. He was diagnosed properly. And from then onwards, my sessions with the different therapists, speech therapists, then occupational therapists, and ABA therapists, and general special educators, all this continued for about 3 to 4 years. From the age of maybe 3.5 to 7 years of age, he was with different therapists. So when he was 3 years old, he was very happy kid. He was never a moody child, but he was like loving to play, running around in the parks or going out on bikes or just spinning around watching songs, but nothing really like interactive play or exploring his environment or whatever toys we offered. He never seemed interested. And he was very hyperactive at that time. He was constantly jumping from furniture, walking on the walls, those kind of things. But with the therapy, his hyperactivity has come down. He slowly learned to sit. His attention span has increased slowly. We try to introduce him with more board games and evaluate his cognitive levels, improve his cognitive skills, etc. That way he was better. But speech, never ever any increment I couldn't see till about 7 years of age. Hardly he was able to just say, at the maximum was something like ah and pa. Those are the only two syllables I could hear when he was around 7 years of age. Just like most autistic kids, what they do, they either take us to the place where the thing is there, like his food items or his water bottle, or take a car key and come to me to show that he has to go out, or just pull me to the gate, because his needs probably were only like 10 to 12. So probably we could guess by what he was saying, although we attempted to try that you should at least try a word before we listen to you, but that never worked. Actually, he was getting more frustrated when
It was just easier in your household to respond to those nonverbal communications, because if you didn't respond to those things and you made him stop and try to say a word, to try to elicit some talking and teach during those activities, then he resisted.
he resisted a lot. And actually, I even tried, like, okay, do not say a word, but at least point to the object rather than just grabbing us. But even that didn't work. But later on, I realized that his fine motor skills were also very weak. That's why his pointing never was good. Now, with after a lot of training, now he can point. Even now, his pointing is not with a proper index finger kind of pointing what we do.
So let's talk a little bit about the motor issues. Was he a late walker as well?
No, that was the challenge, because his gross motor skills, to the extent of running, climbing steps, everything was just perfect. But the problem was with his coordination skills, like hopping, or maybe jumping with 2 feet, or kicking a ball, or maybe say standing on 1 feet just for 5 seconds, just throwing a ball over the shoulder, bouncing a ball, for the smallest ones, which I can say, using his toothbrush, like eating with a spoon. Although he knows exactly what he's supposed to do, he puts it in his mouth, but the way the hold is on the spoon is very, what I can say, in a discoordinated way. The way he holds the pencil, he's 10 years old now, and yet he cannot button. Uh, Only zipping is what he can do, or press buttons is what he can do.
Yeah, this is where the global apraxia diagnosis comes from. It's not a strength, it's more of a coordination disorder where children have difficulty making their body do the things that their brain wants it to do. Isn't that correct?
Yes, absolutely. So because he never had a gross motor milestones which were delayed, it was almost like a mask diagnosis till about when he was probably 6.5 years. Only then I was going on searching for an alternative diagnosis to ASD, because he was socially always a happy child. He always wanted people. He was always sitting with people. He wanted people to talk to him. Only thing, he was not reciprocating his, what I can say, feelings, but it was never like he was avoiding people. And he was improving in all the other levels, like on his cognitive levels, on like, I used to train him with special education material like pointing, matching, and in that way I used to test his what is the level of understanding that he really has, and it was pretty good. I can say on par to a maybe 7 8 year old child right now. His understanding of general knowledge, general events. So that made me little skeptical about his only diagnosis of autism. So with the help of net and lot of books and my friends, and then consultations with few other specialists, finally his diagnosis of global apraxia was confirmed. And since then we are moving in the direction of more of occupational therapy for him, and more of coordination kind of activities to improve his bilateral, what I can say, cerebral coordination. And since then I'm able to appreciate some good results in his other issues also, except
Ah,
for speech. That's why I'm here.
okay. Right, great. Well, thank you for explaining all of that and how blessed we are to have a pediatrician as also a parent who can so eloquently explain the process of, the identification and what you went through, and also the fact that you're in India and how things work a little bit differently there, because you did have to travel to the United States to actually get some
Yes.
consultation, didn't you? And
Yeah.
where in India are you? What area?
I'm from southern part of India, Andhra Pradesh,
Okay.
and Hyderabad is the actual place where we took
Ah,
all these therapies.
So shout
Yeah.
out to everybody in Hyderabad. We're
Yeah.
happy that you're all listening and knowing that these kind of resources are available to you now online. You don't have to travel to the United States to get
Yeah,
to
that's
that
really
kind
great.
of. All right, so let's move forward and talk a little bit more about what's happening and that's different. So now that you came up with the true and accurate diagnosis for what's going on, your therapies have changed, but more from a neuroscience perspective, right?
Yes,
Neurologically, what's going
yes,
on in your child's brain from a functional perspective with the kind of physical activity that you're doing in therapy, the real occupational therapy. And when we talk about occupational therapy, that's why they call it that. It is the therapy that involves what is going on with your body, the occupation of your body, the things that your body needs to do to be successful and survive as a human. We have to learn to eat, we have to learn to move, and we also have to learn because we're humans. We're motivated to improve our knowledge. We're curious. We're naturally curious. So the things that we are interested in, we do spontaneously explore, but we are limited in our interests to our physical ability. And that's why children who are otherwise ill or have something else going on, they're always going to focus their brains on fixing that underlying issue before they work on the higher level abilities. Does that make sense with your training as a pediatrician?
yeah, absolutely. Because probably I could give a small example. Like when you're learning how to drive a car or very scared and anxious on the road, if somebody asks you a very simple question, also maybe something like, what's 6 plus 5? Probably your mind is not really working because you're all into like move the car in a straight line without hitting somebody. That's all you want. You're not really thinking about what else somebody is asking you or sharing a joke with you. You are not in that mood. So probably these kids who actually have these motor challenges, their entire time, their entire day is into balancing themselves, coordinating their body, moving without probably falling down or like avoiding whatever they could do. There is no real time for them to really learn and communicate with people, express their feelings and all this probably comes later. When I started with occupational therapy, I could literally see that difference, that he's more calmer now. He's at least trying to, although I can't say he's like completely trying to communicate, but at least he is trying to express what he's feeling with some amount of emotions shown on his face. When
Right.
I'm trying to teach him with some special education material, he kind of shows interest now rather than doing it
Great.
by force.
What you're learning is about the kind of functional repetitive practice that will take your child's neurology that is working together. In his case, the fact that he can run around and move quite well, and combine those activities with fine motor activities that are less developed in the neural pathways. And by doing those things, what fires together, wires together. That's what, neuroplasticity is all about, is when you have practice doing these things, it feels better. And then those other things that before seemed very, very challenging because the pathways weren't developed, suddenly are better developed. And
Yes.
it becomes a little bit easier for the child to learn to talk. They feel better about it. And that's why my book is called If It Isn't Fun, It Isn't Fun. Because when
Yeah.
it isn't fun for them to learn at all, just like what you said, then the learning doesn't happen because they're too busy worried about not having fun. All right. So now, did his speech repertoire increase?
Yeah, definitely. But it was not like very easy. Maybe it took me almost like an year to make him just say the vowels, like just the I, E, O, U sounds with
Right.
using my finger prompts and like literally putting my finger on his different parts of the mouth and tongue to show where his tongue is, how is he supposed to move it out, how is he supposed to move his lips. Those took a lot of time, but when he gained a base, After that, it was a bit easier for me. So in the last 1 year, I could say I could see the maximum difference in his at least attempt to speak. Although still he is not speaking voluntarily, but at least the number of words he can say now has increased. But he still needs a lot of little bit of cueing to begin the word, because
Right,
he gropes a lot to really start saying a word. It
right.
is as if like his mouth, his tongue is not in his control, and literally he has to put in all his effort to bring the lips together to say a word.
Yeah.
So that is there. His difficulty is definitely there. He's not a pure autism child who actually doesn't have any motor problem but doesn't want to talk. It is not like that. So he has a, maybe I can say, an additional severe problem in his motor aspect. So he's trying his best, and probably we are doing what we felt is correct. But I think we still need more like proper solid direction that speech therapists like you would be providing, like what exactly we are doing is wrong, or maybe we should modify a bit of it, make it more fun way. So that's what I'm looking forward. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, and I think it's perfect opportunity. It's a perfect time for you to be talking to me because the fact that he is trying, the fact that he's groping for words means that he is really pushing through. That's what's really helping grow these neural pathways, right? Because if you don't try, just like when he was pointing, he didn't point at all, and now he's using a whole hand point or, something general, at least that, you've improved those things. He didn't say
Yes.
any sounds at all, and now he's saying some words with your help. There has
Yes.
been improvement. So the wiring is happening. And yes, you're right, it's taking a long time. And that's
Yes.
because when you train an individual motor movement, like putting your lips together as a skill, then it is just one related when you teach it as an individual skill, but not part of the language. It's only wiring one portion of the whole complex superhighway of functional language, spoken language. But in
Yes.
order to build the superhighway in your case, at least you have to lay down some asphalt. You have to put down the gravel path first. Where there was
Yes.
no pathway developed, you have to do something. And that's why
Yes.
it's only children who have this diagnosis that has been found in a real global fine motor apraxia that I do recommend that physical prompt based kind of work. But it only has to work, you only have to do it for a very short period of time. And short meaning, like in your case, it took a couple of years. But
Yes.
at some point, the most
We
important thing about any situation, when you are using a physical technique or a memorization technique, is it's only laying the foundation. It's not going to build the superhighway. It literally is the first layer of what you
Yes.
need to be training. And
Yes.
because spoken language that we use, the language that I think every parent wants and that you're looking for, is the spontaneous, I talk whenever I feel like it comes out of my mouth without any kind of need for you to prompt or elicit or, trigger those pathways for happening. Is that what I'm getting?
Yes, I completely understand. I want the parents who are hearing this also to take this. This is only in case of probably an apraxia that you need to really go for the uh, strict finger promptings and touching the lips, touching the mouth kind of cueing. But in his case also, I can say we are able to fade the prompt in a way that now I don't touch his face, but at the maximum I show him touching my throat or my lips to let him explore, like even if it's wrong, fine, no problem. So
Right.
even that prompt I'm trying to fade, but this is only
Right.
in a case of dyspraxia.
Yeah. And that, thank you for sharing that, which is a really important thing. And the reason that you are fading it and the reason that every parent needs to fade prompting is because kids don't appreciate being prompted all day, every day, do they?
No, even he never liked it. But when he actually got few words out of his mouth, he was surprised that, oh, even I can say this. Still, he was happy.
So sometimes you do have to work hard to push through those physiological blockages. But if it
Yes.
was just an attention issue, you wouldn't need to
Mm.
touch his face or have him touch your neck or anything like that at all.
No.
He would be listening to you. And that's the other thing that I want to really highlight that you have done in the time that you've worked with him before. You know, you even found out about this in those younger years when you were modeling all the language that, you know, they were doing in the ABA therapy. It was all the repetitive things, you know, kind of
Yes.
teaching the vocabulary, right? So
Yes.
he did, even though he wasn't able to say those words, he was
Yes.
listening every time someone said, it's your nose, it's blue, it's
Yes.
yellow, it's, you know, whatever. And he even learned all of those academics that he needed from
Yes.
the materials that you used and that kind of thing. Where does
Yes.
he go? How does he do his education right now?
Actually, in the place where we live, we do not have any schools which cater for children with special needs. So, with the help of a shadow teacher whom I have trained myself, she goes along with him and sits in his class and assists him in his work. And we kind of train him with the same, what do you say, the lessons which he has in the class, but in a picture way, with the means of pictures when he comes home, and he takes his exams also in the same way. They give him picture cards and they ask a question. He answers to them showing the picture. So even teachers are kind of okay with it. As of now, he's just in third grade. So
Right.
I hope we can continue for maybe 2, 3 years more.
You know, when he could use spoken language, he could attend a regular class, even with his shadow teacher, and be a lot more able to
Mm.
participate with the other peers.
Definitely, because I think he hardly has any friends. Although they are very good, his classmates are gentle, kind to him, but because there's a lot of communication issues, so I don't think he can really play with them, or
Right.
they try to, take him into their group and all that. But he's kind of fine as of now. He's happy being himself. So as of now, no issues that way.
So, if you were going to be working with me in my program, you know, there are steps to the process. We have to uncover all the blockages, and these physiological blockages sometimes, in, you know, especially in your case, took years to
Yes.
overcome these things. First of all, to identify what exactly it is, understanding that this is what it is. Part of your plan would always be incorporating gross motor activities, because even though you have been working hard to improve talking and saying sounds, the gross motor activities are the things he's always been good at. That's the
Yes.
bottom line whenever he's running around, whatever. Because without knowing him and without knowing you, any strategies I would give you would be to go way back to the things that he loves the most. Now,
Yes.
what does he enjoy now that he's a 10-year-old? Is he riding bikes, or what does he love as a gross motor activity?
He loves to travel sitting back on the bike or sitting in the car. He loves trampoline kind of jumping activities. Then he's now going to swimming for the last 1.5 years. Still enjoys the that kind of activity. So that is what he's enjoying. And then he loves to watch some songs of his choice. That is his kind of routine, like maybe half an hour in a day. He definitely wants to watch those songs. And then he loves to go out with to these restaurant kind of things with his family.
Social. He wants to go out, he wants to ride, he wants to move and explore.
Swimming, he's interested, so we are taking
Yeah,
daily. So he
great.
loves that.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's wonderful. So, those activities and talking about the before, during, and after of those activities. In fact, I just did a video on my YouTube channel. So, that one you definitely should look at is how to swim your way to spoken language, a 3-step process, how to talk about the before, during, and after of the swimming lesson time, your swim time, to
Yes.
facilitate language, because the most important thing for these kids to be able to build those superhighways, those spoken language superhighways, it's all about the connection of the things that they are good at with the things that they want to talk about, that they want to develop, because we're only going to try to develop more skill if we are motivated for that thing. So that's
Yes.
why using the things that he loves, like swim and, riding in the car, is also a wonderful time for language facilitation, because he's right there. You've got a captive
Yes.
audience. He's in the vehicle with you, and you're looking at the same movie out the window. What do you see out there? All the traffic, all the things that he likes to talk about. So, the
Yes.
most important thing is to talk about the subjects that he is focused on, following
Yes.
his focus and talking about those things, but providing models without any expectation of him talking. And this is the part where it gets to be, you know, more uncomfortable, I think, for some parents, where it's like, wait a minute, I'm actually doing less because you're not pressuring and prompting to say those sounds. But what you have to get in your head is that you have to trust that he has learned these things, that he
Yes.
knows what those words are, and give up testing all day. Does he still remember those words? Does he still know what blue is? Does he still know how to match these two similar objects? You don't have to do those things over and over and over again, especially with a child who's already 10, because it's going to
Yes.
be annoying for them. They are
Yes.
going to want to learn during functional activities. And so, even though getting better at attending and paying attention at school is a goal for you, it's the spoken language that's going to help him do those things, right?
Yes, exactly. Even my speech, whatever little bit of time we had, 10 minutes of time, I could see that he tried more when he was with me in the car or on the two-wheeler bike which we have. And while going to swimming class, because he's in a enjoying mood, like, okay, let's go now. I like, okay, some speech class for about 5-10 minutes, and then um, swimming. He kind of says, okay, and then he talks.
You're noticing that
Yes.
when
Exactly.
he has this physical outlet, he has a chance to do what he loves. He starts to
Yes,
feel better about trying at the things that are challenging.
yes, yes. And speech therapy in a small room never worked for him. It happened over years, and I could see many therapists tried with him. But in a closed room, he never opened his mouth. He just wants to get out of the room. That's it. I will not say a word. I just want to go out. That's all he did in all those 7 years, I can say.
Wow.
So,
Yeah. So, and it's all you had, right? It's all you had. Everyone said your
yes.
child's not talking, you take them to the speech therapy. So that's all you
Yeah.
had. Yeah.
Yeah, so I used to take him regularly, devotedly, every day, 1 hour, and then try back at home too.
Hmm.
But in that class, I never saw him interested. Neither he was interested, nor he was trying. It was just like a 45 minutes of sitting there and coming back. That's it.
Yeah. So,
Mhm.
how is his behavior now? I mean, you were talking about how, you seem to be getting a grip on helping him start to say more words. But
Yes,
again, the swapping the prompting challenge on my YouTube channel is that one video where, if you are a parent at home listening to this and you don't know how to fade prompting, that video is a great it's a great way to get started. It has been a jump start for many, many families, because it's that blockage of making your child feel anxious about talking, even without realizing that you're doing that, you know. It's not helping them make functional improvement. It's filling time. When, like you said, just 5 or 10 minutes riding on the back of your bike, you're able to get him to listen and focus and even try on his own with a smile on his face.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. That's without frustration, I can say. Yet to see him smile and try the words. Not
Yeah,
yet.
not
He's at
yet.
least not frustrated. Yeah, that time.
Yeah.
Rest of the time, he's frustrated if I ask him to say a word. But in the car or while going out, he's at least pleasant and saying something. Not fully happy though. Yeah.
Yep. So, working with me as a client, we would focus a lot on that mindset, making sure that whatever activities you get, I give you, and what I give to families who work with me is not specific strategies to get kids to say words. It's specific strategies to facilitate the different reasons we use language. For example, asking for things, responding when social, in social situations, meeting friends, going to a new, in trying new situations like traveling. One of the things that you talked about that's challenging for your child is airport time because he's a mover, and facilitating waiting and not using screaming or reacting in some, big and public kind of way, a
Yeah.
better way to communicate feelings that other people can understand.
Yeah.
Those kinds of communications are already happening still in the nonverbal realm for you, right?
Yes, exactly.
How does he
Mm.
communicate now if he is upset?
He still cries. When he's upset, it's like he screams and then he doesn't hit back or anything like that. But we can literally see him like in that agony, like a meltdown. His face turns really red and he's like a bit sweating and crying and just throwing
Yeah.
himself around. But
And
that
what do you
doesn't happen too often, actually.
Okay, good.
So,
Okay, good.
mm,
Well, and I think it doesn't happen often because you've already started fading that prompting, because you
yeah,
realized that if
yeah.
you continued to push him, you would get more of that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So now I stop whenever he's a bit like I want to go. I kind of like, okay, fine, go. We'll do something else and come back. So literally, I'm little on the leisure mode now. Earlier, I was like, no, this is how like half an hour. We have to finish this half an hour because I might not get a chance with you later on in the
Uh-huh.
day. But now I'm more like, it's fine, it's fine. You don't want now? Okay, fine. Let go out and have a ride on the bike and come back. Then we can see. Yeah.
And what
So he's
made you decide to make that change from I've got to get this half hour done and push him through it to going ahead
uh,
and letting that go?
maybe just over years, I realized that his intelligence is not that bad that I need to train him literally on small aspects like, say, this is apple, this is book. Obviously, he knows it, and I know that. And then I thought probably his confidence is too low that he by himself knows that even if I attempt, I'm going to fail on this. So he probably doesn't want to attempt. I probably didn't like myself pushing him to feel so low and bad. So I thought, okay, let us take your own time, see what will happen as life goes on. Let's see. And my husband actually, he's in exactly opposite mode of me. Like he's like, child should grow as he wants. We should not like force our this thing onto him. If he doesn't want to talk, let it be. He's as fine as that. But I'm not as far as relaxed as he is. So I'm like, no, no, let us give a little push and see what happens. A little push, a little push. So he actually keeps me in check. Like, see, this is like you're annoying him now. Just stop it there. So maybe he's on that extreme. So he kind of balances my this thing, and we came to a
Brilliant.
conclusion that not trouble him too much, but at the same time, I will not stop doing too. Yeah.
Great. Well, that's great. And thank you for him. That's why you don't have a child who is aggressive. He knows that there's a gauge in your household, that there's a boundary, that they're not going to push
Yeah.
me to the point where I'm going to be
Yeah.
upset. How can we continue to keep this happy household while still encouraging him to try his hardest? Right?
Yes.
To work really hard with these things. And this posturing and this trying to say words and you coaching him through that, knowing that he's trying, encouraging that he's trying, that's going to be the ticket. But it's also going to be facilitating language at just above his level, where you'll be modeling the kind of words that he wants to hear. And then also taking into consideration, we don't know exactly how his processing is working. If he's hearing fast enough, if he's hearing, catching everything that people are saying, because even if he's processing as fast as lightning, if he has anxiety or underlying worry about, oh no, someone's talking to me and now I'm going to have to respond, that idea of worrying about have to respond stops a child from being able to listen properly.
What you said is exactly right. He being a 10-year-old, he's doing all the rest of the board activities so well. But when I just say him, go to the other room and get something, he looks at me like a confused face. And if he hears something which is very commonly said, like a phone or something like a bag, he gets it immediately. But a little bit, like maybe a cream, get your cream, body cream. Then he's so confused. He goes there and gets something else and come back. Really, I'm in a dilemma yet to like decide what exactly is interfering with his processing, because something is there which is actually coming in the way. When I'm just sitting in front of him and I put the things in front of him and ask, he's fine. He's giving me whatever object I'm asking. But when I say go and get, he goes, but he gets something else and he comes back and then he's like confused.
Okay, so that is a very, very good piece of information, which means that there is something else going on that isn't necessarily physiological, which is really good because remember, it's that physiological movement coordination thing that's kind of stuck right now. But what you've been focusing on is that motor thing only, and we haven't been focusing on the auditory processing. So that's where the language facilitation will really help you. So the video that you need to watch, if your child is in this situation, if you're listening to this podcast, you should watch the video that says use language facilitation talk. It's a special way that I teach parents how to talk with their kids. So it's not just about the right words, right? We have to say the right words, the words the child is interested in. But when we say them in the right way, that means that we're speaking slowly enough for children to be able to process every bit of every word in every phrase. And if you're not making sure that they're getting every bit of it, then they're missing part. And that's what's happening. That's what's manifesting in this inability to follow directions. And, you're taking it back to maybe he doesn't understand that it is lotion or it is, whatever that you're going to get. But it's the complexity of the sentence that he's not getting. Because remember, back when he was tiny and he didn't know how to communicate yet, he was put into very strict activity based, do this or say this, directions or prompts, right? He was put into that kind of learning situation where he had to use his eyes a lot, because if they're not talking, they test kids by seeing if they will physically respond, point to the right picture or show me the picture or something like that. And even like you said, you're using pictures as a way to test his knowledge. So his visual center in his brain is completely trained and potentially overtrained compared to the auditory processing part. The visual memory in his frontal lobe and the occipital lobe in the back part are trained to be popping because that's how you're testing. That's what he's trained over. You've literally trained to the test. But what's not been trained, the area that's still like a gravel path, is the auditory processing and motor coordination center, which goes the other direction. It's the higher level. So that's why language facilitation will help you to see improvement. And even the other parent who is in my program has a little guy who, same age, 9.5, learned how to ride a bike, and then other things started to happen and the language started to come, and then it was all a bunch of echolalia and single words and stuff because he wasn't processing fast enough to catch all the language that came in. It was just this gobbledygook stuff that started to come out because they realized it wasn't just the motor, it was also the processing that they needed to address. So that's your missing piece. That's what it is for you.
Yes. So I think maybe we can work on the auditory processing, this thing. Although I try to talk very slowly with him, only maybe in 2-3 word level of sentences. Get cream on the table. That's it. But
Yes.
maybe even that's not fine, probably. So I need to see the video.
In that case, it still is a test, right? Because it's
Yes.
not a demonstration of what that language is. When you're telling him to do something, he has to listen, process, and follow the direction to get the right answer. That's a lot
Yes.
of stuff to do. And he
Yes.
is not listening to the language of get cream now. He's trying to, in his head, match which one of those words do I recognize, cream, and I know it's that thing over there, but I
Okay.
don't know what else she's telling me exactly because his brain is too busy focused on cream and there, and blah 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 is coming out the rest of the time. It's not a processing necessarily, it's also an attention thing. So that's
Maybe.
why the first strategy that works for every family is make sure your child is listening to every word you say, just like you are. But the problem is, it's still a prompt, it's still a direction. It's
Yes.
not a demonstration of the language. And with language facilitation, how you demonstrate that and what that thing is while you're using the cream. This is the cream. I'm gonna get the cream and smear it all over you. That's how you demonstrate the language that later, when you say get the cream, he knows means, oh, that means I got to reach out, grab it, and give it to you.
Okay. Okay.
See the difference? Because
Mhm.
get the cream is trying to teach him something that he's trying to remember, a matching activity, an identification activity that you taught him in school
Okay.
and all your
Okay.
special ed activities. So that's the difference. Do you understand?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah.
You know, if you were working with me, we would work really hard on showing you how to use the activities because you can't do any testing or prompting until you teach the activity. Just like if you go to math class and you're in algebra or whatever differential equations and he has got a problem as long as the whole big board, and he says, calls you up to the board first to do it before he's even explained how to do it, you're going to be struggling through the whole thing and worried because the whole class is watching you.
Yes,
Right.
maybe.
That's the
Yeah.
typical life of a late talking child, especially one who's older, because they know that everybody knows they can't talk socially.
Mm.
They know they have things they want to say, but they just don't know how to speak the language. They know how to understand it basically. You know, it's kind of
Yes.
like second language learning. This is how I always explain it, like second language learning, where, you know, when you learned English, you learned in school first because your mom wasn't speaking English, right? So
Yes.
eventually, when you learned to speak English, you learned in school, and then you learned to be able to have conversation when you started talking with other English speakers and you listened to them. Oh, that's a coffee cup. You know, you learn the language as you listen to other people use it functionally, right? So
Yes,
this is
true.
it. Your son is learning to say words word by word by word by word. And that's what's happened up until now. And it's worked to get him functionally the words he wants to try to say. But it's not the same as learning language, right? The communication of the feelings and all of those things. And that's where language facilitation will get you.
Hopefully the videos will help me. Yeah.
Yep, that's
Mm.
right. And if you're interested in joining my program, wavesofcommunication.com is where you go to learn about all of that. Thank you so much for joining us again today and sharing your story. And all of you parents out there, listen, if you want to learn how to help your child talk faster than speech therapy by addressing all of the issues that are going on underlying and then using language facilitation talk in the right way, I have a Facebook page, Waves of Communication, waves like the ocean, and you can also see me on YouTube. I have more than 200 videos over there, and I'll see you all on the next episode. Thanks again for joining me.